Trailing the Mohawks by 2 points with 15 seconds to play, Maurice Jackson grabbed the jump ball and passed to Gary Meisner, who drove the lane to score and tie the game. Except it didn't. The skimpy newspaper account simply states the officials ruled that the goal didn't count. Maybe somebody who was there can tell me what happened at that game. All I know is that the Bombers ended their regular season at 15-3 and were once more denied a seed at the Kansas Sectional, which is why they had to face 19-1 Brewster in the opener, which is a crime against the sport of basketball. Except that this time, Schlupp's regimen of facing only the toughest teams paid off. Schlupp figured their only chance was to slow down the game, since the Railroaders had been averaging almost 80 points a game. The only problem is that a stall game usually gives a team only outside shots, and the Bombers only made 20 field goals that night. It was enough. In an epic game in which neither team led by more than 3 points until the final minute, and Tom Denver was handcuffed by Brewster's 6'6" center, Maurice Jackson coolly scored 17 points, and the Bombers slipped by their first foul, 49-44. Now next up was a familiar, dreaded opponent, undefeated Atwater. Schlupp had learned from the earlier loss to Atwater. He told his boys that he didn't want to see any daylight between them and the men they were guarding. And never was there a tighter defense. Atwater made exactly 11 of 61 shots that game. They didn't make a single basket in the first quarter. Tom Denver couldn't move without a Spartan draped over him, but Don Gatrell collected 20 points to take the pressure off Tom. It may have been the best game that Dick Schlupp ever coached, but he still resorted to an old coach's trick. The picture in the Record Courier shows assistant coach Leo Cott calmly picking at his socks, while Schlupp has his hands folded and his eyes rolled towards heaven. And the score at the end was a divine 61-41. Coming up was the Doylestown in the first game of the district, a tournament only the 52 Bombers had visited. Doylestown certainly had to be easier than Brewster and Atwater. After all, they had lost 2 games during the regular season. But Schlupp believed that only the Bombers could beat the Bombers. And darn if they didn't try. First Tom Denver fouled out. Then Wayne Hall followed him to the bench. Maurice Jackson picked up his 4th foul. Meisner, Gatrell, and Franklin had 3. The Chippewas spent most of their night at the foul line. But if they were at the foul line, that meant that they weren't making field goals. And so maybe that's what Dick Schlupp had been praying for. The Bombers hung on to win, 56-55. So now they had gone further than any Windham team in history. They knocked off 3 teams which had a combined 3 losses during the season. And all they had to do now was beat the Vienna Flyers, who had been in the state finals the year before. And their starting 5 averaged 3 inches taller than Tom Denver. The Record Courier said the only chance the Bombers had were if they could bottle up the Giants without fouling them. And they did, for 47 minutes and 58 seconds. With Windham leading 58-57, Ken Mashore, Vienna's 6'5" center, drove the lane for a layup. Wayne Hall blocked him. It looked for all the world like a charge, but the referee didn't see it that way. The picture in the newspaper the next day shows Tom Denver holding up the runner-up trophy. And things would never be that good again for Dick Schlupp. He lost Tom Denver and Don Gatrell, but figured with Wayne Hall, Gary Meisner, and Maurice Jackson coming back, he'd be just fine. Bob Franklin had been a fantastic sixth man, and an amazing sophomore named Dave Flower was moving up from the JV team, destined to split a guard position with Bill Barker, who was a defensive wizard. Schlup thought this team, could be his ticket to the state finals. He thought so even after losing Gary Meisner and Bob Franklin for part of the season with appendicitis, which must have been contagious that year. And with only one single early season loss to Newton Falls, he just might have been right. A 17-1 record was a great preparation for the single A tournament at the Camden Fieldhouse. Except Windham wasn't playing in the single A tournament. Courtesy of a conniving villain from Mogadore named Ned Novell, whom you've heard me curse several times, for the only time in its 83 years of existence playing boys basketball, Windham had to play in the big school tournament. Because of dropouts and transfers, Windham's enrollment was less than half of any of their potential rivals. Wayne Hall tipped in a Maurice Jackson shot to beat Southeast in overtime in the tournament opener. But owing to the whims of an independent schedule, they still had to play one more regular season game against Warren St. Mary's. And only Bill Barker's clutch baskets at the end pulled out that win, 68-67. In the AA Divisional Sectional Final against Springfield, Wayne Hall and Gary Meisner spent over half the game on the bench with fouls. But Schlup's boys still almost managed to pull it out, finally falling 61-57 to end another great season. On August 8, 1958, Dick Schlup resigned. He never got to see the Bombers back in the small school tournament where they belonged. He was hired away by his alma mater, Kent State University, to become the head basketball, golf, and tennis coach at their brand new branch in Ashtabula. He brought Bill Barker and Maurice Jackson there to play for him the next year after they graduated, even letting the boys live with him for a while. Tragically, Dick Schlup's young wife died during a gallbladder operation. And that seemed to drain all of his drive. He left coaching to become a college administrator, first in Ashtabula and then in Lima when Kent established a branch there. And that's where I lost the trail of Dick Schlup. So which was the greatest team in Windham's first 30 years of basketball? Was it Dave Thomas's 1942 team, featuring the same boys who had been international champions in six-man football? Or was it Clayton West's astounding 1952 team that had the longest winning streak in the state of Ohio? Or was it one of Dick Schlup's last teams, which lost only 6 regular season games in 3 seasons? I think the 1931 girls team might have played any one of those guys to a tie. So I guess the search goes on.